Hi, you guys. Sarah Baccaro. Today's video is going to be about the trouble with trauma. I work with people who are looking to make significant impact and change in their lives after having been in a relationship or had experiences with narcissists. Sometimes the relationships are from childhood, from upbringing. Sometimes they're personal relationships. Sometimes it's just people in their lives and they notice their own internal patterns, behaviors, and they're noticing the symptoms of those traumatic events and experiences. So, oftentimes, that's what we notice first are the symptoms from the traumatic experiences that we have made it through. And maybe you felt like you barely made it through, but here you are today watching a video like this. And that's part of the trouble with trauma is it doesn't fit inside a little box. Oh, if you experience this type of trauma, here you go in this box. Oh, if you experience this type of trauma this many times, come over here. I've got the right box for you. You just go in here and I know exactly what to do to fix you or change you. But a lot of therapies and modalities say that if you experience this, all you have to do is that, and then you'll be fine. And the problem is, it's not that cookie cutter. So many people that I connect with feel like they've been put in a box and now are afraid. They're afraid to reach out. They're afraid to get help because they're just going to be put into another box or written another prescription or given another diagnosis, slapped with another label, and they don't want that. They actually want to break out of the box, out of those internal patterns. They want to break out of those habits, those thoughts, those feelings that they're having, and those behaviors that they seem so stuck in because of the things that happened to them in the past, because of those traumatic events and experiences. And they want to do so without having to go back and be re traumatized or drug through the mud again. And that's the trouble with trauma is that it's connected in so many ways in your life, in ways that you may not even have thought of. So I'm going to share with you my little diagram. Oh, good. It's not backwards. So it's so entangled and enmeshed together. So just for the sake of this video, we're going to be covering three things today: trauma, anxiety, and depression. And I've always said that anxiety is worry about the future and depression is living in the past. And both of these things kind of go hand in hand from a traumatic event or experience. And then there's the experiences, the symptoms that you see from anxiety, the symptoms from depression, the symptoms from trauma itself, the things that will connect because of all of these, and then just these areas as well. So we're going to break this down and go over this today because the trouble with trauma is it's not just, oh, if you experience this kind of trauma, this is what you can expect. It's not like that because when it comes to traumatic events, things rarely can be fit into those boxes. Diagnosis or symptoms or modalities that you can use to move through those things, they can all overlap. And if you're looking for, a lot of people do go out searching symptoms, and then videos like this pop up. Uh, and you're trying to find a diagnosis. And I work with a lot of people who have been in narcissistic relationships, are doing the inner work to heal themselves after having experienced that, and they want this diagnosis. Well, can you tell me if this person was a narcissist? No, I cannot. And if that's your concern, you're concerned with the wrong thing. If you're really concerned about the diagnosis from someone else, then you're looking in all the wrong areas. And that's really, what is that going to do for you? Right. So symptoms and experiences exist on a spectrum. There's the whole spectrum of them, and some come and some go, and some feel like sometimes they're all there in one day, right? You may be fine in the morning and then lose it by evening, or you may lose it first thing in the morning and then by evening you're fine. But then that leads to other things like addictions or having to grab a glass of wine or numbing out or whatever it is that you do to avoid the feeling and the experiences that you have from those traumatic events. And you can take one person who's experiencing the same thing, and they may process it very differently. They may look and feel and act completely different from this person who went through something very, very similar. And oftentimes, especially in support groups, that's what can occur is you can sit there and you can hear that person's story and think, well, who am I? Like they had it way worse than me. And then you find that you're comparing your story and you're experiencing to that of someone else and thinking, I shouldn't be feeling the way that I'm feeling. And I don't even feel safe to express how I'm feeling because this person had it way worse than I did. And I'm just going to hold this all in myself. So it's all jumbled up together. But when you experience a traumatic event like this, what you experience is this overutilization of your survival strategies, of your coping mechanisms, because those are the things that kick in to keep you safe. That's your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response right when you're experiencing the traumatic event. And it can be something as simple as someone raising their voice or yelling at you. Now I'm highly sensitive to loud noises. And my daughter is as well, because she's got to go with a narcissistic father who's always got the TV up turned really loud. He's always yelling. And she, when she's with me and things get too loud or even something externally, will just put her head down and cover her ears. It's almost like that freeze and that going in response. It's a survival strategy of there's nothing else you can do. So you do things to try and protect yourself. And when she can't run away, so she can't initiate the flight response. But when you experience a traumatic event, you go through this overutilization of the survival strategies and you do whatever it is that you can do to protect yourself and keep yourself safe. So this gets hit onto high alert. And when you experience a number of traumatic events, all in a row or all in a time period, this over time becomes ingrained in the neural pathways in your mind. And then when it's mixed with the depression, when your mind is thinking about what happened in the past and what you could have done differently, or what else you could have said, maybe ways that you could have stopped it or changed it or fixed it. In this section here, guilt settles in. And it's really inappropriate guilt because there is nothing that you could have done differently. I mean, maybe there is, but thinking about it and ruminating on it will do nothing beneficial for you. But your mind seems to just be almost energetically pulled there to the guilt of what you could have done differently. That's why I say it's inappropriate, because you can't ever go back and change the past. You can reshape your future, but you can't ever go back and change the past. And the guilt is over the things that you could have done differently, or you're telling yourself you should have done differently because then it may have ended up better, but you can't. So that's why the guilt is inappropriate, because you don't need to have guilt or those thoughts that are energetically pulling you back into the past, into those events that are almost re-traumatizing you, re-triggering you, and then leading to this space of depression. And if you're always in a low mood, you're always angry, you're always irritable, you're always sad, you always feel heavy, you always feel mopey, you feel depressed. Well, depression is when you're focusing or giving your time or energy into those events that have already occurred, those things that you can't do anything about now, that you can't go back and change or do anything differently in regards to. And then there's anxiety that comes into play. Anxiety, what it is just a worry spiraled out of control or excessive worry. Maybe you're worried about now, you're worried about the future, what's going to happen. What if this, what if that, and what's going to happen to myself, what's going to happen to my kids. And so you're living into this anxious filled future and you're dealing with this anxiety, and then it just feels like your head is spinning, because that's what anxiety is, and it's connected and linked to depression because of the traumatic event. And then in between here, the anxiety and the depression, there are normal emotions. We all have a whole range of emotions, but we think, well, we're too much this, we're not enough that, we're over that, I'm hypersensitive, I'm too sensitive, I'm excessive in this department, I'm excessively sad or excessively worried, whatever it is. There's an exaggeration, a magnification of normal emotions. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel worried, but there's an exaggeration of the sadness, an exaggeration of the worry. It's actually normal to feel all of the emotions. But when there's an exaggeration or magnification of all of them, that's when it becomes troublesome and when it starts to significantly impact you. In between the trauma and the anxiety right here is fear, is panic, is worry, is restlessness. And then in the middle is where all those things come together. And you may notice that you have difficulty sleeping, or you have night terrors, or you wake up. You can go to sleep, but then you wake up and your mind's just spinning a million miles an hour. You have difficulty with changes. If there's any slight or little change in your schedule or your day, or you expected this to happen, and all of a sudden it's a little bit different than the way you expected it was going to be, you lose it. And maybe that impacts your appetite. Maybe you're an emotional eater, and then that leads to you spiraling into overeating or over drinking, or you shut down and you don't eat, you don't drink, you become a hermit, you stay inside, and you're filled with dread. You become very irritable. Just like that, you can go from being completely fine to just like a volcano busting its top open, and you become overly cynical in your thinking, and everything is just an explosion of this world around you. So that's the difficulty when you have a number of or a series of traumatic events or a really, really big trauma. It's not just, oh, you experienced this traumatic event, like you were assaulted. Oh, just go do this. Because it's so mixed up, and you may go from here to 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 here. And it may feel like you're stuck in a ping pong ball machine. And all of that may occur in a matter of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So it's not this little box of like, oh, you're going to feel this bad for this long, and just take this or just do this when that occurs, and then you'll magically feel better, be fixed or cured. It doesn't work that way, because all of this impacts you. It impacts your mind, and anything that's going on in your mind will express itself physically. And there are incredible exercises out there, like journaling, like breath work, like meditation, that can work for a time. But a lot of people I've connected with find it really difficult to do those in a time where this seems to be at a level 10 out of 10. Yeah, if they're noticing it kind of coming on slowly and they're at a 6 or a 7 out of 10, then they can step back or step away and do those things and give themselves space, and then incorporate more self-care, and they can kind of bring themselves down to a level that's manageable for them. But sometimes something happens out of the blue and you just get triggered and shoot up to a 10, and then you stay at a 10 for far too long, and then you feel completely out of control, completely helpless, and then it's like you're on the edge of a life raft and you're like clinging on for dear life, and you're barely holding on, and you don't know how to swim. And that's the way it can feel, because this has impacted you at the neurological unconscious level. And that's where the change needs to occur, so that those things can begin to become broken apart, and that you can learn to self-regulate or regulate in a more appropriate way. Some people do regulate, but they regulate in a harmful way. I've worked with lots of people who turn to self-harm because they're numb and they can't feel anything. And to feel something, they will turn to self-harm. And that's not what they want. You don't want to be on that journey or on that road for any longer than you have been, if you've been on it at all. And if you haven't been there, it's certainly not one that you want to go down. So where the most impactful and powerful change can occur is at the unconscious level, because of those traumatic events, your mind has stored them, has filed them away. And those triggers, it's like brings them out of the file folder and says, here you go, and like slaps it on your desk right in front of you. That's what it can feel like. And it can feel like, what? Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to? I already put this away. And then here it is right in front of you, and you're having to deal with it again and again and again. And then it spirals you down to all of those things that you do to try and avoid feeling all those feelings that can just resurface immediately. So that's the trouble with trauma. It doesn't fit in little boxes, and you go, oh, well, when this box presents, just do this. So in order to disconnect from those triggers, or to have them be much less, or give you the ability, the skills, and the techniques to manage those when they do arise, that's where the change needs to occur. It's not just consciously. I've had people tell me like, oh, I, worked with someone, they say, just carry a paper bag with you and just breathe into it. Well, the problem is when I'm triggered like that, I don't give a flying, what about the paper bag. I want to rip it up. I want to burn it. I want to destroy it. I'm not going to pull it out and go. So there are lots of tools, tips, and tricks out there, but a lot of them are not beneficial, because it can just come on out of nowhere. because now it's got an unconscious connection that shows up and impacts you. And that can seem to come out of nowhere. So that's why the most powerful, impactful work is done at the unconscious level. And that's through the power of hypnosis, of rapid transformational therapy, because it makes the change at the unconscious level so that those triggers, when presented, don't have the same impact and they present as different experiences. So if you're interested in learning more about that or going through a transformation, having a breakthrough yourself, so that all of these things that feel so knotted and so tied up now in your life and they're impacting you in ways or impacting your friendships, relationships, your career, who you are as a parent, the goals that you want to obtain or achieve in life, and you feel completely stuck in all of that and you're ready to get unstuck, then I would love to connect and talk with you more about exactly how we can get you that breakthrough and that change so that you can begin to disconnect from all of this. So, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in and watching. There's always more information in the description below this video and links to connect and possibly work together one on one if we are a good fit to do so. Thank you guys.